So you might have seen this on the internet. I seen it on Instagram this morning, and this is Mikhaila Peterson and Rollo Tomassi. And a while ago, I think it was a couple of months ago, Rollo Tomassi did a kill to party video and highlighted Mikhaila Peterson. Now, just to be fair, Rollo Tomassi does explain at the very beginning of that video that he's just highlighting something. He's not accusing Mikhaila of anything. Now, understandably, from Mikhaila Peterson's point of view, when she obviously seen this, and she mentioned in her Instagram today that she did watch it and felt it was a little out of order. And apparently, according to both of them, he'd already agreed to go on her podcast and talk about his book, The Rational Male. So I was really interested in watching this today, and I watched it this morning. And do you know what? I come away from it like with just absolute respect for both of them. Obviously, I don't know either of them personally, but I was just so astounded at the way they conducted themselves, the way they were both prepared to be accountable for what they'd said, what they'd done, the way they highlighted some of the problems, some of the misunderstandings, the problems with social media. Like Rollo Tomassi talked about a picture that had been put up, and Mikhaila addressed that. It was a picture with Tate Andrews. And Mikhaila was like, "Yeah, no, I that's great, but the problem was he posted that picture 3 or 4 months after it was actually taken." Of course, and Rollo Tomassi's like, "Well, I'm just commentating on what we see in social media because that's what he does. He does the Rational Male. He's part of the manosphere, the red pill community, whatever you want to call it. And I quite like some of his content, and he does actually, I think, do a very good job of trying not to separate hate from actually this is how you can have good relationships." But they both got into a conversation about this is the problem with social media. You post something and people can misunderstand it. But what was fascinating was neither of them dodged any questions. They both talked, they both listened. At no point were they shouting over each other. At no point were they trying to talk over each other. There really was an ebb and flow, a conversation where both people, and this is my impression, where both of them seemed to want to try and understand the other person's point of view, and at the same time hold their own line and have a conversation, almost a debate. And I think both of them, if anything, would come away from that and realise they have a lot in common, and on one level could probably be quite good friends. And I could certainly see an environment where neither one of them would backstab the other one. And honestly, I just was really surprised at the level of integrity in that podcast. So hats off to Mikhaila Peterson for having Rollo on. Hats off for Rollo going on there. And, some of the things they highlighted. And I noticed this morning in Instagram. Right? I looked at that, the clip that Mikhaila posted, which was about dragging viewers in. That's her job. Rollo Tomassi addressed the thumbnail that he used with Mikhaila, because again, as he puts it, it's about the steak and sizzle, dragging people in, getting their attention, because that's their job, that's what you want. But when you read the comments in the Instagram of Mikhaila's fans, they're all just calling Rollo a misogynist, an idiot, a dickhead, all shitting on the red pill community, the manosphere community. And they're all doing exactly what Mikhaila and Rollo were kind of highlighting as a problem. So it's quite clear that none of those people had watched the podcast, who had waited to see the whole of the podcast. It was also clear when you read the comments in the original video that Rollo did, how many people just hate the Petersons and hate Mikhaila and think she's just a freeloading whore who benefits from her dad's fame. And one of the things Mikhaila addresses in the podcast with Rollo is she is aware of this interpretation of who she is. But where do you even start to manage that? And how do you address this public persona this public reputation. And I think the podcast was she's just done is a great way of addressing that. But and it's one of the things that's difficult. Like me right now, I'm commentating on a podcast where one person is talking to the author, if you like, or the original content creator, who did a piece that could easily be perceived as attacking her. And from one dimension, at least, it definitely was attacking her. But it was attacking her from a point of context. And that's not right or wrong. It's just, hey, I'm just using this as an example of, and it's the party to kill, or kill to party, sorry. But at the same time, the clickbait or the headline, whatever you want to call it or interpret it, if you don't sit down and watch all of it, it's very difficult to understand where Rollo was trying to take that, to help young men understand the difficulties that can happen for women when they have children at a young age, especially when it's not the right partner for them. And I thought one of the things that Mikhaila did incredibly well was acknowledge that when she had her daughter Scarlett, it wasn't planned. She kind of knew that Andre wasn't going to be the ideal husband for her. And she made some incredibly difficult decisions. And I would say at the time with good intention of hoping that it would work out. And then, as lots of adults realize as they get older, and it only happens, this wisdom only comes with hindsight, is it wasn't the best choice. But it's not the best choice now. But at the time, it was the right choice and the best choice to make. And again, that it's so complex. But I felt they both did a really, really good job of discussing this calmly, openly, without any hate, without being overly emotional. And I think, for me, I recommend, the link will be in the description. I recommend everybody watches it. I think it's a great podcast, probably one of the best I've ever seen, just because of how personal it was for both of them. Mikhaila is the person who could easily feel that she's been attacked personally. Rollo was the person who did the attacking, or used her as an example that could definitely have ruined some of her reputation on the internet. Although I do think he hasn't swayed anybody that didn't already think badly of Mikhaila. But on the whole, I think anybody who's got half an open mind will come away from that with a lot more respect for Mikhaila. I certainly have, and I never had any problems with Mikhaila in the first place. I've always thought she's quite an articulate, intelligent person, and I've never really got into any of her personal life side of things, because who hasn't had a personal life that's a bit of a train wreck at times, and from following her dad, Jordan Peterson, you can see there's lots of family dynamics that are incredibly difficult just because of some physical health problems and some mental health problems. And the pressures that they've had as an entire family when certain people around the world on the left, say, have attacked them. And there's a lot of commentators that attack the Petersons without actually ever listening to what they're saying. And that's not the same as agreeing with everything they have to say. But as a psychiatrist, a psychologist, Jordan Peterson is probably best placed to to discuss and commentate on social dynamics. So I've always kind of had an idea in my head that you don't really know who Mikhaila Peterson is. And so whenever I've seen these things, I don't pay much attention to it. And I've always liked Rollo Tomassi. I discovered him a couple of years ago with The Rational Male, Richard Cooper being another guy with his book, The Unplugged Alpha. And again, it's the problem that you have is the same problem Mikhaila Peterson has. It's the same problem that Rollo Tomassi has. People take your headlines and judge you on that, and they don't give any time to study the person. What is the message they're trying to get across? What is the problem they're trying to solve in people's lives? And I think this podcast is a great example of how people should behave and should interact what is possible when you try. And I hope that it definitely restores the reputations of both of them, because they both deserve it. And it was an absolutely fantastic podcast. And I really, if you want to learn about some human dynamics, the difficulties of relationships, the message that Rollo Tomassi is trying to get across to young men, and just the way nicely, politely, they hold each other accountable and listen. Check out the podcast. It really is a great podcast. Good viewing, good listening. Thank you for watching.